He had always loved music. It was the one thing in his life that made the world feel lighter, brighter, and full of endless possibilities. From a very young age, the sound of the piano had drawn him in like nothing else. He didn't have much in the way of resources, but somehow, he always found ways to listen to music, to study it quietly, and to imagine himself playing. The world around him was often harsh and loud, but music offered him a quiet refuge, a secret place where he could be completely himself. Life, however, was not easy. He grew up in a small town where opportunities were few and dreams were often put aside in favor of survival. His family worked hard to make ends meet, and he had learned early on that he could not always expect life to be gentle. Money was tight and luxuries were rare, yet he had a heart full of music and a mind full of imagination. Every spare moment, he would hum melodies, tap rhythms on any surface he could find, and lose himself in the beauty of sound. Even when life was difficult, music made him feel alive. He never had formal lessons. The local schools did not have music programs, and private lessons were far too expensive for a family that had to worry about rent, bills, and groceries. But he was determined. He would spend hours watching videos online, listening to recordings, and teaching himself. Sometimes he would close his eyes and imagine that he was sitting in a grand concert hall, performing for a full audience. Other times, he would picture himself playing on a small stage in a cafe, the gentle hum of conversation around him blending with the notes he created. These daydreams kept him going, even when the world seemed to expect him to focus only on practical work. Like any other young adult in his town, the small cafe where he worked became his temporary home. It was a quiet place with a few tables, soft lighting, and an old, upright piano that had been there for years. Most people ignored it, seeing it as just part of the decor. Some patrons thought it was too old to play well, and others didn't even notice it at all. But for him, it was a treasure. He would sneak moments whenever he could to sit down and play. Sometimes it was a short tune. Sometimes it was an entire piece that he had learned from memory. It was never about anyone else. Music was personal. It was his way of expressing things that words could not. His co-workers noticed, of course. They often teased him about his fascination with the piano. "Why do you spend so much time with that old thing?" they would ask, laughing. "It's just a piece of wood with keys. You should focus on serving customers." Some even mocked his passion, making jokes about how no one would ever care about his playing. But he didn't let it bother him. He knew that music was bigger than their opinions. In fact, the teasing often made him more determined. It made him want to prove that the sound he could create was worth something, even if no one else saw it yet. He had a small notebook filled with musical ideas. Page after page contained sketches of melodies, chord progressions, and rhythms. Sometimes he would experiment with combining different styles, blending classical techniques with the music he heard on the radio or in old records. The process of creating music was thrilling for him. He would lose track of time, fingers moving over the piano keys as if they had a mind of their own. The cafe would be quiet around him, and he could feel the energy of the music building in the room, even if no one else noticed. Many nights, after the cafe closed and the last customer had left, he would sit alone by the piano. The quiet of the empty cafe was comforting, and he would play for hours. Some nights, he would play soft, gentle melodies that felt like whispers of hope. Other nights, he would let the music explode in fast, passionate bursts, as if trying to release all the tension of the day. Each note was a piece of him, and each piece of music carried a part of his soul. He had learned to play not just with his hands, but with his heart. Even though he was shy and reserved, music gave him a confidence he did not feel anywhere else. When his hands were on the piano, he could communicate feelings he could never express in words. He could be brave without speaking, strong without moving, and proud without needing anyone else to notice. This secret power of music became his lifeline. He began to imagine a life where he could share this gift, where people would listen and feel the way he felt when he played. But for now, he was content to dream quietly, practicing in a corner of the cafe, unnoticed by most, misunderstood by some, and adored only by himself. People sometimes walked past and heard him playing. A few would stop briefly, curious about the soft notes drifting across the room. Some would smile and move on. Others would listen for a few moments and leave without a word. There were moments when he wished someone would recognize the effort, the talent, the emotion behind his playing. But he knew that true recognition was not the goal. The goal was to play with honesty, to pour himself into the music, and to continue improving. No matter who was watching, he often thought about the future. He imagined small performances in cafes, local events, and eventually larger stages. Sometimes, these thoughts scared him because they seemed so far away. Other times, they excited him, fueling his determination. Every note he practiced, every hour he spent perfecting a tune, was a step closer to that dream. He began to believe that one day, his music would speak for him in ways the world could not ignore. Despite the challenges, he found joy in small victories. When he finally mastered a difficult passage, he would feel a rush of pride. When a melody that had been stuck in his head for days finally flowed from his fingers, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. These small achievements became his motivation. They reminded him that progress, no matter how quiet or slow, was still progress. They reminded him that he was capable of creating something beautiful, even in a world that often overlooked him. He also learned patience. Music was not something that could be rushed. Every piece required attention, every chord demanded focus, and every performance, even if it was just for himself, required practice. Over time, he developed a discipline that carried over into other areas of his life. He became more attentive to details, more determined in his work, and more thoughtful in his interactions with others. The piano had become more than a hobby. It was shaping him as a person. One afternoon, a friend who worked at the cafe noticed his dedication and encouraged him to play at a small, open mic event being held in town. The thought terrified him. He had never played for anyone outside of a few curious listeners in the cafe. What if people laughed? What if they didn't like his music? What if he failed? These questions plagued him, but deep down, he knew that he could not hide forever. The piano had been his secret for too long. Maybe it was time to let the world hear what he could do. He spent the next few days preparing, practicing pieces he had played countless times before, refining them, and making sure every note was exactly how he wanted it. Each day, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. He knew that performing in public would test him in ways he had never been tested before. But he also knew that it was an opportunity, a chance to step out of the shadows and share his gift. Music had always been a part of him, and maybe, just maybe, it could become a part of the world around him as the day of the event approached. He felt a strange mixture of nerves and anticipation. He continued to practice in the quiet corners of the cafe, often staying late after closing, letting the notes fill the empty room. Each time he finished a piece, he felt a wave of relief and a sense of readiness. He knew that when the moment came, he would have to face the crowd and play, not just with skill, but with courage. Music was no longer just a private escape. It was about to become a test of his confidence and determination. The cafe itself had become a sort of sanctuary for him, a place where he could be himself without judgment. The old piano, worn and scratched, had witnessed countless hours of practice, each key holding a memory of effort and emotion. He often ran his fingers over the keys, feeling the cool surface beneath his hands, and imagining the sound that would come next. The piano had become his companion, a loyal friend that would never criticize or mock him, only respond to his touch with music. He often thought about the people who doubted him. He wondered if they would be surprised one day, if they could imagine the beauty he could create. Some doubted because they could not see past his quiet demeanor. Some because they thought self-taught musicians could never be good enough. But he refused to let their doubts define him. Instead, he focused on the music, on the feelings he wanted to express, and on the idea that one day, the sound of the piano would speak louder than words ever could. And so, he continued to practice, to dream, and to imagine. He knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, that there would be challenges and moments of doubt. But he also knew that music had always been his guide, and that as long as he stayed true to it, he could face anything. Each note he played, each melody he created, was a step closer to the life he had imagined. He didn't yet know what the future held, but he felt ready, determined, and hopeful. Music had been his secret for so long, and now he was on the edge of sharing it with the world. The thought was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. He understood that people might laugh, mock, or even ridicule him, but he also knew that true music came from the heart, and if he played with honesty and passion, no one could. The day of the open mic event arrived, and he felt a nervous energy that pulsed through his entire body. He had never performed in front of a crowd outside the quiet corners of the cafe. Every scenario he had imagined about this moment seemed both exciting and terrifying. He wondered if the music he had practiced so diligently would be enough. What if he faltered? What if the audience laughed at him or ignored him completely? The thought made his stomach twist with unease. He arrived at the venue early. It was a small community hall with a modest stage, a few chairs for the audience, and simple decorations that tried to make the place feel warm and inviting. The piano on the stage looked grander than the one he was used to at the cafe, with shiny black keys that reflected the lights above. It seemed almost intimidating at first, but he reminded himself that the instrument was just a tool. The music came from him, not from the piano. As he waited backstage, he watched other performers take their turns. There were singers, a few guitarists, and even a young magician. Some of them received polite applause, others were greeted with enthusiastic cheers. He noticed a few people whispering and looking at him curiously, wondering who this quiet boy was who kept checking the piano from behind the curtain. Their expressions were a mixture of skepticism and amusement. He felt the weight of their eyes on him, as though they were already judging before he had played a single note. When his name was called, he felt a sudden jolt of fear. His hands grew sweaty, and he took a deep breath, trying to calm the rapid beating of his heart. He walked toward the stage slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. As he approached the piano, he could hear a few snickers from the audience. Some people whispered, "Who does he think he is?" Others chuckled quietly, shaking their heads. It was not a hostile audience, but it was clear that many of them expected little from him. He sat down on the piano bench and adjusted his posture. The keys felt cold beneath his fingers, and he could see his own reflection in the polished surface. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. He questioned whether he should even go through with it. The ridicule he imagined was almost tangible, pressing down on him like a heavy weight. But then he remembered the countless hours he had spent practicing, the nights alone with the piano, the melodies he had poured his heart into. He realized that this was not just about impressing anyone. This was about being true to himself. With a deep breath, he placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. At first, the notes were soft and tentative, almost like a whisper. He could hear the audience shifting in their seats, some exchanging skeptical glances, others barely paying attention. The snickers had not completely faded, but he tried to focus on the music, letting the sound flow naturally from him. The opening notes were simple, almost hesitant, but they carried a quiet beauty that slowly began to draw attention. As he continued, he felt himself relax. The music began to flow more freely, and the melodies he had practiced so many times came to life. He leaned into the piano, letting his emotions guide his fingers. The audience began to notice the change. The whispers faded, replaced by curious silence. Some people sat forward, intrigued by the unexpected depth and emotion in the music. He could see their eyes widening, their attention shifting fully to him. The laughter and ridicule that had seemed so certain at first were slowly being replaced by curiosity and wonder. Even though he felt nervous, he allowed himself to become absorbed in the music. Each chord, each rhythm, each note became a conversation with the audience. He wasn't just playing, he was telling a story, sharing pieces of his life and heart through sound. The melody he had created in his imagination so many times before was now taking form in the real world. The emotions he had hidden for years, joy, hope, frustration, longing, were all expressed in the language he knew best, music. Some members of the audience exchanged glances, surprised at the skill and passion behind the performance. They had expected a timid, inexperienced pianist, but what they were hearing was anything but that. The complexity of the chords, the flow of the melody, and the subtle nuances in timing and dynamics revealed a talent that could not be ignored. He played with precision, but also with feeling, and the combination was captivating. Slowly, the room began to quiet completely, the earlier chatter and laughter fading into nothingness. Even the people who had been skeptical at first could not help but be drawn in. Some felt a lump in their throats as they listened, realizing that this was more than just a simple performance. There was depth, emotion, and an unexpected brilliance in every phrase. The timid, self-conscious boy who had walked onto the stage had transformed into someone completely different. Through the music, he had become a storyteller, a guide, and a creator of emotions all at once. Despite the growing admiration, he remained focused, his mind entirely on the music. Every movement of his hands, every press of the keys, was deliberate and intentional. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was trying to communicate, to let the music speak for itself. The piano, which had once been a source of comfort in quiet corners, had now become a bridge between him and the audience. Through it, he could connect with people in a way words never could. There were moments when the music became more intense, faster, and more demanding. His fingers flew over the keys, keeping up with the rhythm, executing every note perfectly. The audience could sense the effort, the skill, and the passion. They leaned forward, captivated, realizing that they had underestimated him. Some even exchanged whispers of astonishment, unable to hide their amazement at the talent unfolding before them. The ridicule that had seemed inevitable at the beginning of the performance was disappearing note by note. He continued to play, moving seamlessly between soft, delicate passages and powerful, dramatic sections. His control over dynamics and tempo was impressive, revealing not just technical skill, but a deep understanding of how to evoke emotion through music. The performance was no longer just about notes on a page. It was about feelings, about connection, about creating an experience that everyone in the room could share. The audience, once skeptical and amused, was now fully engaged, listening with rapt attention. Even as he played, he could feel his own nerves transforming into exhilaration. The energy from the audience, subtle as it was, began to feed him, giving him confidence and courage. Each note reinforced his belief in himself. Each chord validated the countless hours of practice, and each melody reminded him why he had loved music in the first place. For the first time, he felt that his secret talent was no longer just his own. It belonged to anyone willing to listen. There were still a few skeptical glances, a few whispers from those who couldn't quite believe what they were hearing, but those were fading in the background, overtaken by the overwhelming response of those who were genuinely moved. Some people felt a shiver run down their spine. Others had tears welling in their eyes. It was as if the music had created a shared emotional experience, binding the audience together in a way that words could never achieve. He noticed the way people's expressions changed. The smirks and dismissive looks were replaced with wide eyes and open mouths. Some held their breath as the music swelled to crescendos, feeling the intensity of every note. Others smiled softly, letting the gentle passages wash over them. The transformation in the audience mirrored his own journey from doubt to confidence. He had walked onto the stage uncertain and fearful, and now, through the power of music, he had claimed his space and his voice. The final part of the piece approached, and he felt a surge of emotion. He poured everything he had into these last moments, letting his fingers fly over the keys with precision and passion. The melodies intertwined, building to a climax that left the room hanging on every sound. The music seemed to expand, filling the space, touching every corner of the hall, and enveloping everyone present. There was a sense of completion, of fulfillment, of a story told and understood. When the last note faded, there was a moment of stunned silence. The audience, unable to immediately react, simply absorbed what they had just witnessed. Some looked around, searching for confirmation that what they had heard was real. Others simply closed their eyes, savoring the final echo of the piano. For the performer, the silence was almost as powerful as the music itself. It was a pause in which he could feel the impact of his performance, the connection he had made, and the realization that he had surpassed the expectations of those who had doubted him. And then, as if a dam had broken, the applause began. It started quietly, with a few claps, and then grew into a loud, enthusiastic ovation. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and even whistling. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of appreciation and acknowledgement that washed over him. He felt a rush of gratitude, relief, and joy all at once. The ridicule and doubt that had been so heavy before were gone, replaced by admiration and respect. After the performance, people came up to him, expressing their astonishment and praise. Some admitted that they had expected very little and were blown away by what they had heard. Others simply smiled, shaking their heads in disbelief, saying that they had never seen someone play like that before. He listened politely, feeling both humbled and proud. He realized that this moment, this recognition, was a reward for all. After the first few notes, he could feel the atmosphere of the room shifting. The audience, who had initially been skeptical, began to lean in closer, their curiosity now replaced with a quiet attentiveness. Every soft note he played drew them further into the world he was creating. It was a world of melody and rhythm, a place where feelings could speak louder than words. He felt a calm settle over him, even as his fingers moved faster and more confidently across the keys. He let the music flow naturally, without hesitation. He played pieces he had spent countless nights perfecting, but he added touches of improvisation, letting his emotions guide the melody. Each variation, each subtle change, carried a piece of his heart. He was no longer just performing. He was telling a story, the story of his struggles, his dreams, his quiet determination, and the joy he found in music. With every chord, he invited the audience to feel what he felt, to step into the world he had created in those long hours alone. The room grew quieter with every passing moment. The soft whispers and chuckles that had followed him onto the stage were now gone. Every eye was on him, watching his fingers dance across the piano keys. There was an almost palpable tension in the air, a sense of anticipation that made every note feel alive. People began to realize that this was not an ordinary performance. This was something extraordinary, something that could not have been predicted by appearances or first impressions. He noticed a few faces in the audience that were completely still, staring at the piano as if trying to understand how such beauty could come from someone so unassuming. Their expressions reflected astonishment, disbelief, and awe. Others had tears in their eyes, not just from the skill of his playing, but from the emotion it carried. They could feel the story embedded in the music, the struggles and triumphs he had poured into every note. He could see that the audience was not just listening, they were experiencing the music, letting it reach into their hearts. Even though he was aware of the audience, he was not distracted. He felt as though he and the piano had become one entity, moving together in perfect harmony. His mind was entirely focused on the music, on the story he wanted to tell. Every note was intentional, every pause carefully placed to enhance the emotional impact. He allowed himself to get lost in the rhythm and the melody, feeling a freedom he had never known in front of an audience. The music was no longer just a hobby. It was a bridge connecting him to every person in the room. As he progressed, he moved from soft, delicate melodies to faster, more complex sequences. His fingers flew across the keys with precision and confidence. The audience could sense the skill required to play at this level, and their awe grew. Some leaned forward in their seats, unable to take their eyes off him. Others sat back, eyes closed, letting the music wash over them, feeling emotions they could not name but understood instinctively. The performance had become a shared experience, one that united everyone in the room through sound and feeling. He could feel the tension and excitement building inside him. The music demanded more from him now, challenging his technique and his endurance. But he welcomed it. He thrived under the pressure, letting his fingers respond instinctively. Guided by years of practice and a deep understanding of the piano, every chord resonated with meaning, every passage told a story, and every variation revealed a new layer of emotion. The audience was mesmerized, unable to look away, caught up in the power of the performance. There were moments when the music became intensely fast and intricate. He moved through these sections with confidence, executing complex sequences flawlessly. The crowd gasped in disbelief, realizing that what they were witnessing was not just talent, but genius. The ridicule and doubt that had followed him to the stage were now completely gone. The room was filled with admiration, respect, and a sense of wonder. People could not believe that someone so ordinary looking could create such extraordinary music. He took a brief pause during the performance to allow the audience to absorb the experience. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion, a moment where everyone could reflect on what they had heard. Some held their breath, others closed their eyes, savoring the last notes and anticipating what would come next. He used this pause to gather his thoughts, feeling a sense of calm and clarity. The music had become a conversation, and he was listening as much as he was playing. As the second half of his performance began, he introduced new themes and variations. He blended classical elements with modern techniques, creating a unique sound that was entirely his own. The audience was captivated by the originality, the creativity, and the emotional depth of the music. Some were moved to tears, others sat in awe, realizing that they were witnessing something rare and extraordinary. It was more than just a performance. It was a revelation, a demonstration of what human passion and dedication could achieve. He could sense the connection with the audience growing stronger. Every note seemed to resonate with them. Every chord spoke directly to their hearts. He felt their emotions mirror his own, a silent communication that transcended words. In that moment, he realized that music had the power to bridge gaps, to unite people, and to convey feelings that words could never fully express. He was no longer just playing. He was sharing his soul. The intensity of the performance increased as he approached the final passages. His fingers moved rapidly across the keys, executing sequences that required incredible precision and skill. The audience watched in awe, unable to comprehend how someone so young and unassuming could command such mastery. Every chord, every melody, every rhythm was perfect, yet filled with emotion. The music was alive, breathing, and speaking directly to the hearts of everyone present. He could feel the energy of the room pushing him forward. The applause, the gasps, the silent moments of all of it fueled his performance. He played with a sense of freedom and joy that he had never experienced before, letting the music carry him wherever it wanted to go. The performance was no longer just about technical skill. It was about expression, connection, and the sheer power of music to move people. As he reached the climax of the piece, the audience was completely absorbed. Some sat in stunned silence, while others leaned forward, eyes wide with amazement. The music built to a powerful crescendo, filling the room with sound and emotion. It was a moment of pure artistry, a moment where the piano and the performer became one, and the audience became part of the music itself. The ridicule and doubt that had seemed so certain at the beginning of the performance were now completely erased, replaced by wonder, respect, and admiration. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction as the final notes echoed through the room. The music slowly faded, leaving a resonant silence that hung in the air. The audience sat for a moment, processing what they had just experienced. Some were wiping tears from their eyes, others were staring in disbelief, and a few simply sat quietly, overwhelmed by the beauty and power of the performance. He realized that he had achieved something far greater than he had imagined. He had touched the hearts of everyone in the room. The applause began slowly, almost tentatively, as if the audience needed a moment to collect themselves. Then it grew louder, stronger, and more enthusiastic. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and whistling. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of appreciation and recognition that washed over him. He felt a rush of gratitude, relief, and joy all at once. Every fear, every doubt, every moment of hesitation had led to this moment of triumph. After the performance, people approached him, offering words of praise and admiration. Some admitted that they had expected little and were blown away by the depth, skill, and emotion of his playing. Others simply smiled, shaking their heads in amazement, unable to believe what they had witnessed. He listened politely, feeling humbled and proud at the same time. The recognition he had received was not just for his technical ability, but for the courage, dedication, and heart he had poured into every note. In the following days, word of his performance spread quickly. People talked about the quiet young man who had stunned the audience with his piano skills. Some shared videos of the performance online, while others recounted the story to friends and family. He had become more than just a local curiosity. He had become a symbol of hidden talent, determination, and the power of following one's passion. The ridicule that had once seemed inevitable was now replaced by admiration and respect. He continued to play at the cafe, but now with a new sense of purpose and confidence. Each performance, whether for a small group or a larger audience, reinforced his belief in himself and his music. He realized that the journey was just beginning, that there were more stages, more opportunities, and more people to reach with his talent. The fear that had once held him back was gone, replaced by a quiet determination and a renewed love for the art that had always been his refuge. Through it all, he remained humble. He knew that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, practice, and a willingness to take risks were equally important. He continued to pour himself into the music, striving to grow, to improve, and to share his gift with the world. Every note he played was a testament to his journey, his struggles, and his triumphs. And as he played, he knew that the connection he had made with the audience would stay with him forever. The music had already captured the audience, but he knew he could take it further. He could feel the energy in the room, the way people leaned forward, holding their breath, hanging on to every note. There was a sense of anticipation, as if everyone could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. He looked at the piano, its keys gleaming under the lights, and felt a surge of determination. He wasn't just going to play. He was going to tell a story, to pour everything he had into this moment, and leave the audience breathless. He started a new section of the performance, one that he had practiced countless times, but had never played in front of a large audience. His fingers moved quickly, effortlessly, as he brought to life the complex melody he had imagined so many nights alone. The notes seemed to flow like water, smooth and continuous, yet full of power and emotion. The audience was immediately drawn in, sensing that this was not just music, but an expression of something deeper, something personal and profound. The room was silent, every ear attuned to the sound of the piano. He could see faces in the crowd, some wide-eyed in amazement, others leaning forward with rapt attention. Even those who had been skeptical at the beginning were now completely absorbed, unable to look away. Every note he played carried emotion, joy, sorrow, hope, longing, and the audience felt it all. It was as if the music bypassed language and logic, speaking directly to their hearts. He continued to build the piece, adding layers of complexity and intensity. The rhythm became faster, more intricate, requiring precise coordination between both hands. His fingers moved with astonishing speed and accuracy, yet there was no tension in his playing, only grace and control. The audience watched in disbelief, unable to comprehend how someone so young and seemingly ordinary could command such mastery. Their initial ridicule had vanished completely, replaced by awe and admiration. The music swelled, rising to powerful crescendos that filled the room with sound. He felt the emotions coursing through him, guiding every movement of his hands. This was not just a performance. It was an expression of his soul. The room seemed to vibrate with the intensity of the music, and he could feel the audience responding to every phrase, every chord, every subtle variation. Some were holding their breath, others had tears in their eyes, and all were completely captivated. He allowed himself to improvise, adding flourishes and variations that he had never dared to play before. The audience gasped as the melody shifted and evolved, blending complexity with beauty, skill with emotion. The music became a living entity, unpredictable and thrilling, yet perfectly controlled. Each note, each chord, each pause was deliberate, creating tension and release, guiding the audience through a journey that was both exhilarating and deeply moving. He could feel the energy of the room feeding him, giving him strength and confidence. The audience was no longer passive. They were participants, their emotions intertwined with the music. He noticed the way some people leaned closer, their eyes wide, their faces reflecting awe and disbelief. Others had their hands over their hearts, feeling the depth and intensity of what he was playing. Even the most skeptical spectators could not deny the power of what was unfolding before them. As he reached the most challenging sections of the piece, he felt a surge of exhilaration. The music demanded everything he had: technical skill, emotional depth, and complete focus. He welcomed the challenge, knowing that this was his moment to shine. His fingers moved with precision and speed, executing complex sequences that required years of practice and innate talent. The audience watched in stunned silence, unable to believe the level of mastery he displayed. He transitioned seamlessly between sections, moving from fast, dramatic passages to soft, delicate melodies that seemed to hover in the air. The contrast created a sense of tension and release, drawing the audience further into the performance. Every note was imbued with feeling, every chord told a story, and every pause created anticipation. He was not just playing music, he was shaping an emotional experience, leading the audience through peaks and valleys of sound and sentiment. The audience was completely captivated. They could feel the passion and intensity behind every note, the countless hours of practice and dedication that had gone into creating this moment. Some were on the edge of their seats, others had tears streaming down their faces, and a few simply sat in awe, unable to comprehend the brilliance unfolding before them. It was as if the music had created a bridge between the performer and every person in the room, a connection that transcended words. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment as he played. This was the moment he had been working toward for years, the moment when all the doubt, ridicule, and hard work converged into something extraordinary. The music was no longer just a personal escape. It was a shared experience, a testament to what passion, dedication, and courage could achieve. He realized that the audience was not just listening, they were experiencing, feeling, and being transformed by the music. As the performance reached its climax, the intensity grew to a breathtaking level. The room seemed to vibrate with the sound, every chord resonating in the hearts of the audience. His fingers moved with lightning speed, yet with complete control, executing intricate sequences that left the audience speechless. The contrast between the soft, gentle passages and the powerful, dramatic crescendos created a roller coaster of emotion, leaving everyone in awe of the skill, creativity, and passion on display. He could feel the culmination of the performance approaching. Every note, every chord, every variation had been leading to this moment. He allowed himself to be fully immersed in the music, letting his emotions guide his playing. The audience could sense the intensity, the vulnerability, and the brilliance of the performance. Some were on the edge of their seats. Others had their eyes closed, completely absorbed, and all were holding their breath in anticipation of what was to come. The final moments of the piece were both powerful and delicate. He blended technical mastery with raw emotion, creating a conclusion that was both stunning and deeply moving. The music soared to its highest points, then gradually descended, leaving space for reflection and emotional resonance. The audience was completely silent, hanging on the final notes, fully aware that they were witnessing something rare and extraordinary. When the last note faded, there was a moment of stillness, a collective pause in which everyone absorbed what they had just experienced. The silence was heavy with awe, wonder, and appreciation. People looked around, searching for confirmation that the performance was real. Some closed their eyes, savoring the lingering sound, while others simply stared at the pianist in disbelief, unable to comprehend what they had just heard. Then, as if a floodgate had opened, the applause erupted. It started quietly, with a few claps, and then grew into a thunderous standing ovation. The audience cheered, whistled, and clapped, their admiration and excitement filling the room. He felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. Every fear, every doubt, every moment of uncertainty had led to this moment of triumph. The ridicule that had once seemed inevitable had been completely swept away by the brilliance of the performance. People rushed to congratulate him, praising his skill, passion, and creativity. Many admitted that they had underestimated him, expecting a timid, inexperienced performer, and were now astonished by the depth and mastery of his playing. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief, unable to comprehend the talent that had emerged from someone so quiet and unassuming. He listened humbly, grateful for the recognition, but also aware that the journey was far from over. The performance had not only captivated the audience, but had also transformed him. He felt a new confidence, a deeper understanding of his own abilities, and a renewed commitment to his music. He realized that ridicule, doubt, and fear were temporary obstacles, and that true talent, nurtured with dedication and passion, could overcome any challenge. The music had not only touched the audience, but had also reshaped his own perception of what he could achieve. After the performance, people continued to talk about it for days. Some shared videos online, while others recounted the story to friends and family. The quiet young man who had once been underestimated had become a symbol of talent, perseverance, and the power of following one's passion. His performance inspired others to pursue their own dreams, to overcome doubt, and to embrace the gifts they had worked so hard to develop. He returned to the cafe with a new sense of purpose. Every time he sat at the piano, he remembered the energy of the audience, the astonished faces, and the overwhelming applause. He knew that the journey was only beginning, and that there were more stages, more audiences, and more opportunities to share his music. Each performance, no matter how small, became a chance to connect, to inspire, and to continue growing as both a musician and a person. Even as he basked in the recognition, he remained humble. He understood that talent alone was not enough, and that continuous practice, dedication, and a willingness to take risks were essential. The piano had been his companion through quiet nights and lonely moments, and now it had become a bridge to the wider world. He played not for fame or attention, but for the music itself, and for the connection it created with others. Through it all, he realized that the ridicule. After that unforgettable performance, life began to change for him in ways he had never imagined. The applause, the astonished faces, and the overwhelming admiration from the audience stayed with him for days. People stopped by the cafe, hoping to see the young pianist who had captivated an entire room. Some brought friends, curious to witness the talent that had left everyone speechless. Even strangers, having heard about the performance online, reached out with messages of encouragement and praise. For the first time, he felt that the world was paying attention not just to the music, but to him, the person behind it. He continued working at the cafe, but every day brought a new sense of purpose. Each time he sat at the piano, he no longer played just for himself. He played knowing that people were listening, that they were waiting to experience the magic he could create. He began experimenting with new melodies, blending the classical techniques he had studied with his own original ideas. The piano, once a silent companion in the quiet corners of the cafe, had now become a stage for expression, connection, and discovery. Invitations to perform started arriving. Local events, small festivals, and private gatherings wanted him to play. Each opportunity was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. He remembered the fear he had felt before the first performance, the doubt that had threatened to paralyze him. But now, having faced ridicule and transformed it into admiration, he approached each invitation with a quiet confidence. He knew that the music he created came from a place of truth and passion, and that authenticity could touch people in ways nothing else could. One evening, a representative from a music academy approached him after a cafe performance. They had heard about his talent and were eager to offer mentorship and formal training. The idea both excited and scared him. Formal lessons would teach him techniques and skills he had not yet mastered, but it also meant stepping into a world he had only dreamed of. For the first time, he felt the possibility of a future that extended far beyond the cafe, beyond the small town, and beyond the limits he had once believed defined him. Despite the growing attention, he remained humble. He remembered the hours spent alone, practicing quietly while others doubted him. He remembered the whispers, the snickers, and the moments when he had questioned his own abilities. Those memories grounded him, reminding him that talent alone was not enough. It was persistence, passion, and dedication that had brought him to this point. He had learned to trust himself, to trust the music, and to trust that hard work could transform even the quietest dream into reality. As he performed at different venues, he noticed the transformative effect of music on people. Some listeners were moved to tears, some smiled softly, and others sat in quiet reflection, completely absorbed. It was remarkable to see how a sequence of notes could bridge the gap between hearts, how a melody could convey feelings that words could never capture. With each performance, he gained not only recognition, but a deeper understanding of the power of music, and of his own ability to influence and inspire others. News of his talent spread beyond the town. Social media posts of his performances went viral, shared by people who had never met him, but were moved by his music. Messages poured in from all over, filled with encouragement, admiration, and requests for more performances. The quiet boy who had once been ridiculed for his passion had become a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the rewards of dedication. His story inspired others to pursue their own dreams, to work quietly and persistently even when the world seemed to ignore them. With recognition came new challenges. Public performances required stamina, focus, and the ability to engage with audiences of different sizes and expectations. Each stage demanded a unique approach, and he learned quickly that music was not just about playing the right notes. It was about creating an experience, a connection, and a story. He experimented with different styles, arrangements, and interpretations, constantly pushing the boundaries of his own creativity. The more he played, the more he discovered his own capabilities, and the more he understood the limitless potential of his talent. Despite the growing acclaim, he remained grounded. He never allowed the attention to overshadow the music itself. Every time he sat at the piano, he reminded himself that the performance was not about fame, but about expression. It was about communicating emotions, telling stories, and creating moments that would linger in the hearts of listeners. Each audience, whether small or large, became a part of the music, and he cherished the shared experience, the invisible connection formed through sound and feeling. He also began mentoring other young musicians, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to pursue their passions. He understood the importance of guidance, support, and encouragement, having once been the quiet boy with dreams and no one to guide him. By helping others, he not only nurtured talent, but also honored the journey that had brought him here. He wanted others to know that persistence, dedication, and belief in oneself could overcome ridicule, doubt, and fear. With each new performance, he continued to grow, both as a musician and as a person. He explored new genres, composed original pieces, and refined his technique. The piano became an extension of himself, a means of expressing his thoughts and emotions in ways that words could not. Audiences were consistently amazed by his ability to convey such depth and emotion through music. Some said it was as if he was speaking directly to their souls, telling stories they had never heard but somehow understood perfectly. The sense of fulfillment he felt was profound. The journey from ridicule to recognition had been long and challenging, but it had shaped him into a stronger, more confident, and more empathetic individual. He had learned to embrace vulnerability, to face fear, and to trust his instincts. The music had not only transformed his life, but had also given him a platform to touch the lives of countless others. Every performance was a reminder of the power of passion, persistence, and authenticity. Even as he gained fame, he never forgot the quiet moments alone at the cafe, practicing late into the night. Those memories were a reminder of where he had come from, of the obstacles he had overcome, and of the importance of humility. He realized that recognition and applause were fleeting, but the love for music, the dedication to craft, and the connection with others were lasting. These values guided him as he navigated new opportunities, ensuring that his success remained rooted in passion rather than vanity. People began inviting him to larger venues, including music festivals, television appearances, and even international events. Each opportunity brought excitement and nervousness. He approached each one with preparation, dedication, and focus, knowing that every performance was not only a chance to showcase his talent, but also an opportunity to inspire and connect with people on a deep level. The applause, admiration, and recognition were gratifying, but what mattered most was the ability to communicate through music. He continued to compose original music, blending influences from classical, contemporary, and folk styles. His compositions were deeply personal, reflecting his own journey, emotions, and experiences. Audiences responded with enthusiasm and admiration, Moved by the authenticity and beauty of the music, he realized that talent was only part of the equation. The ability to convey emotion, tell a story, and create a shared experience was what made his performances unforgettable. As his reputation grew, so did the opportunities to collaborate with other musicians. He worked with singers, instrumentalists, and composers, expanding his understanding of music and learning new techniques. Each collaboration brought fresh inspiration, new challenges, and a chance to explore different aspects of his talent. Through these experiences, he discovered the joy of creating music with others, the power of teamwork, and the endless possibilities that rose when creativity was shared. Despite all the success, he remained humble and focused on the music. He never allowed the fame to change who he was or what he valued. He continued to practice diligently, experiment with new ideas, and seek ways to grow as an artist. Each day, he reminded himself of the quiet nights at the cafe, the ridicule he had faced, and the determination that had carried him through. Those memories were his anchor, keeping him grounded and connected to the passion that had started it all. He also realized the importance of using his platform to inspire others. Through interviews, workshops, and social media, he shared his story of perseverance, dedication, and self-belief. He wanted young musicians to know that talent alone was not enough, that hard work, practice, and courage were essential. His message resonated with many, encouraging aspiring artists to pursue their dreams despite fear, doubt, or criticism. Over time, his music began to leave a lasting impact on the world. People spoke of the way his performances could evoke emotion, spark reflection, and even heal hearts. He became a source of inspiration not only for musicians, but for anyone facing doubt or adversity. His journey from ridicule to recognition served as a powerful reminder that true talent, nurtured with dedication and shared with authenticity, could overcome any obstacle and touch countless lives. Looking back, he understood that the ridicule he had once faced had been a necessary part of his journey. It had tested his resolve, strengthened his determination, and made his eventual success even more